Hi, welcome to 333. Today we are going to dive into some disturbing stories from Reddit. If you like the video and want to see more content, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe with notifications on. That being said, let's get right into the first one. I worked as an overnight security guard at a local college. I quit after seeing something in the parking lot. I had just gone through a pretty rough divorce a few months ago. For the brief 2 years my ex and I were married, most of our nights ended up turning into shouting matches and insults. We were always so loud we had gotten several noise complaints and an eventual ultimatum that we could be thrown out of the building. Anyway, we ended the whole thing, and she got the most of everything. The house belonged to her family, along with most of everything in it. She let me only have my clothes, some photos, and my dog, Riley. I was short on money at the time. Luckily, a friend of mine let me stay in his home for as long as I needed. While there, I was looking for a better paying job to help me get my life back on track. My search led me to an opening for a campus security guard at the local community college. I arrived at the interview to learn that this was a job for the night shift. I wasn't too sure about taking the job at first, but my bills and growing debts weren't going to pay off themselves. Needless to say, I started the next night. The campus itself was a decent size, both in terms of area and the number of students. The core campus includes 14 educational and auxiliary buildings. The security office was by the south entrance of the college, situated on the second floor of the parking garage. The two senior security guards, James and Darnell, walked me through my job description. My task every night was to complete 2 full searches around campus, checking all the buildings and monitoring the security cameras. My shift would start at 9:30 at night and go through 6 o'clock in the morning, by which time I'd take the bus home. The job itself wasn't too bad. I kind of developed a friendship between James and Darnell, since there was a brief period of time our shifts would overlap. By the time they both left, it would be midnight for me, and I'd be alone on campus. It's so surreal how such a place that's bustling and full of students can quickly empty out and turn silent. When my shift starts, there's usually a few cars left in the lot for those who took evening classes. Some instructors and other staff would sometimes work extra late, but those instances were rare. In short, my interaction with other people besides my coworkers was almost non-existent. Sometimes on break or in between circuits, if it stayed quiet on campus, I'd read a book or listen to spooky stories on my phone. After listening, I would start to feel a little creeped out for being in a campus all alone after dark, but I got used to it. It killed the boredom until I started my next circuit. I wouldn't find much of anything out of the ordinary, aside from the random object left behind by a student, which I would bring back to the lost and found. I just had to make sure no one else was hanging around after closing. After coming back, I would check the security footage in case I missed something. There were a few screens recording specific spots with the most activity during the day, one for each parking lot, one for each floor in all the buildings, and one for the administrative office. I got decent pay every couple of weeks. After a while, I moved out of my friend's house and got a small apartment and was saving up for a used car. I felt like my luck was starting to turn around finally. Then, I had the scariest experience of my life. I was left alone around midnight like always. The campus was absolutely deserted at this time like normal. It was summer during this time, so the night was pretty warm. I felt like I was building a bit of sweat in my security uniform while doing my first circuit. I came back to the security office after finding nothing of note and checked the camera feed. I found nothing in any of the screens until I checked the one for the south lot, near the office. While the screen was small, I could discern the moving of a large shadow across one of the lamp posts. It was doing nothing but moving back and forth across the light. The shadow looked too large to be some small bird or animal. I deduced it had to be someone parked off screen so I couldn't visibly see them. I went out there to check things out and found nothing there. If it were a person just messing around, they would have to have left a sign of their presence. There was nothing left behind. I didn't hear a car driving off, or any noise for that matter. I scoped the rest of the south lot to find the source of the shadow. Still nothing. I sighed in annoyance at the thought of some jackass deciding to waste my time. Nothing else happened the rest of the night. I got used to sleeping during the day, but all I could afford to sleep on was a cheap couch that was anything but comfortable. It was rare that I got a full 8 hours of sleep on it. And to top it off, the AC unit had crapped out. My cheap apartment had gotten warmer, making it much harder to sleep. I got to the college at the start of my shift with maybe 5.5 hours of sleep. I had coffee, but it only lasted for so long. With it being extremely late, my office feeling cool, and it being quiet everywhere. I started feeling drowsy. Sleeping on the job wasn't allowed, of course, but every now and then I let myself have a brief nap to refresh myself. So I set my head on the desk and fell asleep instantly. I was later jolted awake. A feeling of something very wrong switched my tired mind on alert and woke me up. I rubbed my eyes and checked the monitors to see if anything was up. I looked at the camera feed for the south lot, and my eyes narrowed. Beneath one of the lamp lights, a person was standing, not doing anything, just being very still. I couldn't make out any details, but this person had long black hair and looked very tall for almost reaching the light. I looked at the bottom of the screen and found the camera was still recording. Whoever the camera was showing was still there. The feeling that jolted me awake intensified, and I was aware of myself shaking. A chill colder than the air inside the office crept up my neck. My body was reacting to some sort of danger the image was giving off. Still, a weird person on the security footage was not an excuse to not do my job. I got to the lot in under a minute, and I saw that person still standing under the lamplight, just being dead still. Their back was facing toward me, and their head seemed to be bowed forward. As I approached closer and tried to get their attention, I found that this trespasser was very tall and lanky and was wearing a dirty white dress. I called to her again, asking if she needed help, but didn't respond. She just kept standing like a statue where she was. I reached out to touch her, and my hand retracted back from the burning sensation her skin gave off, as if she were on fire. I cursed and shook my hand to cool it off, and the lady moved for the first time. Her head lifted upward, as if finally acknowledging I was there. She turned around, and I started to track backwards. Her body was humanoid, but she had the head of a goat or ram. The fur was pitch black, contrasting against her pale skin and white dress. The eyes were red like burning embers, and strands of flesh hung off its curved horns. As my backwards walk sped up, I could hear it give off a deep, thunderous roar. I ran back towards the office, and I swear I could hear the thing sprinting after me. I ran faster than I ever have in my life, and I barricaded myself in the security office. For good measure, I switched off the lights inside and called 911. I told them something was on campus, and they sent someone over. I hung up and strained my ears to hear any noise outside my office. It was hard to notice anything other than the pounding of my heart working overtime. It felt like an eternity before I heard the knocking at the door. The cops notified their presence, and I slowly opened the door. They questioned me about what I called for. When I told them, they looked at me as if I were a mental patient or a drug user. I played the footage back for them, and there the thing was. At the very least, they weren't going to arrest me for making a fake emergency call. But with the trespasser gone, there wasn't much they could do. They left, and I was once again alone. This time I was very afraid. Not that I was alone, but afraid that I wasn't alone. And that thing was still out there. I wasn't taking any chances. I waited in that office, and kept the door locked until the end of my shift. I left a note saying I resigned immediately, and I never went back. Do you think the poster was suffering from something like sleep deprivation? Or did he make contact with a humanoid? Let me know in the comments. Our next post is titled, "Do not let your Uber driver cancel your ride while in the car." I know this isn't a therapist office, but this has bothered me for a long time, and I wanted to just get it off my chest. This happened June 2018 in Portland, Oregon. I understand I acted like an idiot in this situation. Since then I have become much more observant, cautious, and honestly, much more paranoid. I went dancing with friends, was really drunk by midnight. Unfortunately, this was back when I had little money, and I realized you could save money by eating very little before going out, and it would take far fewer drinks to get drunk. So I was so drunk I barely remember my friend ordering me an Uber home. My phone was dead. Of course, I can vaguely recall them helping me into the car and telling me to get home safe. I don't remember greeting the driver or the first minute or so, but soon after getting in he asked how my night was and if I smoked. Honestly, I was just thinking about bed at this point, so I sort of just slurred out that I did sometimes. He then offered me a joint, and this is the first moment I get sort of nervous and begin paying attention. I tell him something like I'm really tired and just ready to get home. I think he said something about it being an indica-based joint and it made for great sleep. Once again, I say something not exactly like no, but not a yes, which he takes as a yes, I'll take that joint now. Once again, I'm still drunk enough I can barely see straight or speak clearly. So when he says, okay, well, I have to cancel the ride really quick because I can't give it to you while I'm on the clock or something to that effect, it takes me a second to realize how dangerous that is. And by the time I start to say something, He has canceled the ride and pulls over. We were in a just east of the Hawthorne Bridge, I think, and it was totally secluded, some empty parking lots, a closed auto body shop, no one in sight. It's starting to hit me. I'm now in the car, not with an Uber driver, but with some stranger. I can't call anyone, and he's trying to give me weed that could have anything in it. For the next minute or so we're pretty quiet, or I just can't remember any small talk he tried to make because I was beginning to panic. And every time he handed me the joint I would take fake hits, just breathing it into my mouth and not into my lungs. I felt tired, clumsy, and weak, that kind of drunk where you're almost at the point of nausea. And I knew I couldn't do much of anything to defend myself at that point. I remember vividly being fixated for a moment on the fact I didn't even have a pair of keys to defend myself with, as my building used fobs for just about everything, and I didn't take my mail key with me. As I'm freaking out, I look up to see if this guy is sort of noticing, and I make eye contact with him in the mirror. He was staring at me, but I couldn't read his expression. Finally, he says something along the lines of, "Well, let's get out here." I tell him I'll just call another Uber to get home, thinking at this point it might even be safer to walk. And he says, "No, I still have your address. I'll just take you home." For a moment, I was relieved. I guess I wanted to believe him so badly that I would get home safe. I believed him. I tried to calm myself down, thinking he hadn't actually done anything threatening. Maybe he was just your typical stoner guy and I'm overreacting. At this time, I lived on PSU campus in downtown Portland in the southwest area of the city. He is driving me north on the east side of the river. There are several bridges to our left, and as he keeps moving north, he has several opportunities to take an exit to hop over the river and get me back downtown. He keeps skipping them. We keep passing bridge after bridge that could get me home. Up in northeast Portland, there are some large industrial areas that can get very isolated at night, and Portland in general is surrounded by lots of forests. So I knew he could have me in a secluded area and really quickly. After he passes like the fourth exit for a bridge, pretty sure it was the Broadway Bridge. I've been racking my brain for a way to make him actually take me home and say something to the effect of, "Hey, my boyfriend is waiting for me at home," which was true, though I said it in a very meek way. My driver says nothing, but he did take the next exit for a bridge and basically hum a giant U-turn that started taking me home. Even as we're on the west side of town heading south, I'm still shaking and have my hand on the door handle, thinking about just hopping out at a red light the closer we get to my apartment. My phone is completely dead, and he honestly still has several chances to hop onto nearby highways and speed out of the city. We're getting pretty close to my apartment now, and I'm once again trying to convince myself I'm being paranoid about some stoner that can't navigate the city. Although a few minutes before I was so scared I was crying. So once we get about 2 blocks from my apartment, I lie and tell him it's easiest to stop here and he can let me out. Again, he doesn't say anything but does slow the car. I'm flooded with relief and even feel myself smile. But when I go to open the door, it's locked. I try to lift the lock mechanism manually, but it won't budge. I look up at him instinctually to see what's up, and he's got his head turned almost fully toward me, shoulders still facing the road, smiling at me, the worst smile I've ever seen. It looked so mocking and it just did not reach his eyes at all. I just started crying and asking him to open the door. I was so freaked out and still very drunk, and thank God he did. I will never forget the sensation of vulnerability. Not just being drunk in his car with no way to contact anyone, but even as I got out of the car, I kept feeling like he would somehow grab the back of my shirt and pull me back in. As silly as that sounds. When I got home, I found out my boyfriend had actually gone out with friends last minute and wasn't even home. He wouldn't even have known till much later if I hadn't gotten back safe. The next day, I convinced myself I was freaking out over nothing, which I realized still could be the case. But in my gut, I had truly felt in danger the night before. Technically, this guy could have been totally harmless, but I still think I should have texted my friend and had her report him. The big thing that made me think of this was recently hearing about how Ed Kemper, co-ed killer, would go 4 practice runs, picking up hitchhikers and seeing if he could get the passengers/potential victims to trust him or how far out of his comfort zone he could push them without them saying anything. Obviously, this guy wasn't Ed Kemper, but I hate wondering if that night was a practice run of sorts for my Uber driver. Thanks to whoever reads this whole thing through, I'm at a point in my life where I'm realizing how much danger I put myself in when I was younger and just depressed as hell, and it has made me both surprised and deeply grateful I'm still here. Wow, what a crazy story. If you are planning on a night out, always make sure your phone is charged and stay with a friend. If you liked this video, Please consider subscribing as we are a new channel and it helps us produce more content. Our upload schedule is every second day, so if you do subscribe, make sure to hit the notification icon so you stay updated when we upload. Thank you for your time and we hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe.